Hi everybody, Mars here, the golf professional at Southwark Park Golf Club. This week I just wanted to speak to you about one club and various ways to use it and various ways not to use it. And I think we've talked about it before because it's become more and more prevalent. I think right back to when Seve was alive and he wanted the lob wedge banned. He thought that 56 degrees was enough loft. After that, it was diminishing skill, I suppose. I suppose the skills that he'd learned to master with his sand iron were slightly taken away by these extra lofted clubs. But I think probably back in time there's always been clubs with a lot of loft, but now it's a very common thing to people to put in a lob wedge into their set. Now I do believe that the more skilled you are at chipping, I don't think this relates to your handicap, the more skilled you are at chipping, the more benefit a lob wedge might have to you. There are definitely a lot of ways that you can use this lob wedge and get you into all sorts of trouble. So we'll talk about that later. But basically, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I think a lob wedge probably for most people is going to be a 58 or a 60. I think once you go beyond 60, and I've seen some crazy sort of 64-degree wedges and things like that, I think that you can do all of this with your 60 anyway. We can get this 60-degree wedge to sit flat where you just spin underneath the ball and it would go nowhere. So using that in various positions of hand and body will alter this 60 between less and more, which is probably what you need to learn to do anyway. So I use a 60, and because I like to use it in a bunker, I have more bounce on my 60. So that's the first question when you're choosing a lob wedge. How much bounce do you want to stick onto your lob wedge? Because you need enough bounce if you're going to use it in the bunker so you can use the bounce. If you use a lot of bounce when you're off of a tight lie on the fairway, that's when things might get a bit tricky for you, because obviously it gets the leading edge to sit up higher and your chance of thinning one becomes more and more. So if you say I like my, let's just say my 54 is my sand iron club, then you could have 10, 12 degrees of bounce on that maybe. If you're going to use your lob wedge from the fairway, maybe you should stick to 10 degrees of bounce and less. So 6s and 8s mean the club sits very flush to the ground and very good off a tight lie. So something that I can help you with. If you want some advice on, you know, what type of club, I've got one of these high toe ones, which means the grooves fill the whole of the face. It's relatively new to me, but when you sit it open, I think it looks a bit uglier than a normal club, to be honest. But when you sit it open, then you have the whole of the face's grooves at your disposal, if that makes sense. I'll try and explain that to you a little bit more in the future. So we'll hit some shots, and I'm going to tell you where and when I think you should use it, and this thing about angle of attack, which will be very important when we talk about this. You cannot have a positive angle of attack in a 60, because if it starts to come off the ground too soon or hits the deck too soon, you're basically going to bullet it at 100 miles an hour just off the ground. And this is when don't use your lob wedge, because one of the things you'll have to use is a certain amount of swing speed and length. Right, let's get on and hit a few shots. Okay, so I guess this is prime lob wedge country. I've got to go over a bunker. I've got hardly any landing area to work with. This is probably the club to reach for by default, because if you get this right, we're going to get it high, we're going to land it softly, and we potentially can be near the green. Right, so this is this little bit of stuff to talk to you about swing length. So these ones and the bunker shots, I think, have come off of better off of a long, smooth swing, not a short attacking swing, which I'll show you in a minute. So these type of shots are going to have to be quite long and smooth with some nice momentum of the club, because I'll show you the mistake of having a long swing and getting it wrong. But basically, my lob wedge has got so much loft that if I stand just a tiny bit open and I use it and just swing along my toe line with a long soft swing, the club should do all the work for me. Remember, go back quickly, keep the weight on your left side. So I don't want to make this a chipping lesson, but obviously if the weight comes back onto this back foot, it's where you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So once you're in position, if you go long and smooth from here, you'll get that lovely sort of easy lob, if you know what I mean, that will make it a manageable shot. I know I'm in a bit of semi-rough here, which you could argue makes things a fair bit easier. So I don't want the short attacking swings from here, because you will just drive that chip too much. The pitfall to avoid here with a long soft swing is deceleration. So because I've got it so far back, I can't decelerate on the way back down. Those longer, smoother swings for this type of shot need some momentum. So you're going to keep that club moving. You're going to trust the loft a little bit, and just keep that club moving. That'll ensure that you don't quit on it. You occasionally can see a double hit when you do this because you'll slow down too much and then catch it up on the way through. Unusual shot, a double hit, but it can happen. I'll move away from here to a couple of different lies, but basically you've got to trust the loft of your club, and we're a little bit open, club on the target, long and smooth. And that'll give you those nice little soft lob shots. Right, on to something else. I think this scenario is the one for me that I see most on a playing lesson. I don't go like that, but I do think, why? So let's not use our lob wedge from just off the green. There may be a scenario if you're in some thick rough that you might need to try it, but really from a clean lie with nothing to carry the ball over, don't reach for your most lofted club. I mean, I think one of the golden rules of short game and chipping is if there's nothing to go over, don't try and go over it. Get the ball on the ground and running towards the hole. So don't head for the 60 here. Find another thing that's more of your friend. It may be an 8 or 9 iron, it might be a pitch, or it might be a gap wedge, but it definitely doesn't want to be something where the leading edge can come off the ground and knife the ball through the green, or that you've got to make too big a swing to propel the ball a short distance. So yeah, that's number one of don't do's. This is number 2. So I'm just going to just spin this camera around a tiny bit. There you go, that'll do. Okay, so let's just say my full 7 iron swing would be, let's not do that with a lob wedge, because I see people just trying to force their lob wedge such huge distances. If you can hit your sand iron, let's say 100 yards is a nice round number, don't think that you've got to hit this 90. It's a specialist club which needs specialist treatment. I think you should go never past 10 o'clock. So I'm a bit of a clock face sort of distance control type person rather than power output sometimes. So your lob wedge full swing would probably be here. And a nice bit of power going through, because if you want some spin and some height and you feel like you need the most amount of height and spin, don't get into any positions like this with your lob wedge. Let's keep it tight and you know, accurate. And not where you're blasting shots. So find that yardage out here. For me, I won't go past 60 yards with this lob wedge. If I go past 60 yards, I'm just swinging too hard and the variables are too much. So yeah, let's keep these lob wedge swings tight with acceleration on that type of shot. So, you know, before I was talking to you about swings, so long, soft lob shots, your little bunker shots from greenside bunkers, your little lobs over the green. Shorter, more attacking lob wedges are going to come from the fairway, where I might come off of a relatively short backswing, but with an attacking downswing to try and get some real spin in the ball. So obviously, the more I accelerate near impact, the more backspin I'm going to get. So obviously the long soft ones with an open face might be this gentle lob that hits the ground nice and gentle. It's not going to run on too far. If you've got to hit a 50-yard lob wedge, you're going to have to come off of a shorter swing and much more attacking on the way down. But if 10 o'clock's your maximum, 8 out of 10 is your power output too. So there is a time to be aggressive with this lob wedge, but it's within a very small radius of distance. Right, now I've just focused the camera on the ball here, and let's talk about the risky part and how much you can push this club open. Okay, so let's say we're sitting it here. At this point, I'm going to say that's 60 degrees of loft. Now we obviously can start to push this angle for those flop shots more and more, and we can get back to there. So you can see if I'm going to go to here, how much I've got to change how I stand and where my ball position is. Because if we're saying that here is a square shot, you know, one of my 60-yard ones, if I'm going to try the lob shot, then I've got to do this and I've got to come all the way round to here to make this work. So now my feet are very open to that path, and this club face is still pointing at the target. Now when you look at this, it's forward by my left foot. If I look straight on this way, it's sort of in the middle. That's sometimes, and this is where things get a bit interesting. This is where you've got to practice. In order to be able to do that, there's a few things that have got to happen. My angle of attack has still got to be down. My speed has got to be enough so that I don't double hit or decelerate. And if I'm going to keep this angle here, I've got to hold this face open through the shot. I can't start to let it rotate, otherwise I'll pull it or thin it probably from there again. So this position here is the key to maintaining that. And those two balls have just gone to here, by the way. Okay, so they've gone about 3 or 4 paces. So this is how you need to know if this club's for you or not, by practicing this, because you've only got to get this wrong and come in incorrectly to knife it halfway up the ball. So you will need to practice this. I would start for me, the best way to learn to do this first, actually, let's come and do it quickly because this is worth showing you. I think I've done this before, but this is the best way to learn if you can play sort of lob and flop shots successfully. So the first thing you want to do is find some grass and sit it up as high as you can. All right, so that's perched on a fair bit of grass. Now my aim here is to miss it and I go underneath it. It'll probably move the ball, but not very far. Okay, and if you can get that going, and you can even go into, if you can get the height of the grass right, you'll go underneath it and miss it. So that's your feel for that part of your swing. It's going to give you a bit of a path, because this is quite important too. Bear with, people. We've just got to put the old tripod up. Hopefully you're not too bored already. I'd like to have got on the course and done a little video, but it's packed out there. I think it's called Antipodes or something, which is a pairs tournament. So hopefully that's good fun for all you playing in that today. Not bad golfing weather. So even though it's a bit cloudy, it's still 21 degrees. So pleasant enough. Where's my ball? Right, here we go. Okay, so let's understand what you're trying to achieve to do that. So club face at the target. Because I've had to lay it back, I've got to come this way. I'm going to lower my hands a little bit. Finding the right distance away from the ball is quite important. And then I'm going to go out to in, and I'm going to keep that loft on. So I'm not going to rotate the face, I'm going to hold the loft on. The Dan Grieve people, is this release 3? But anyway, it's the one where you do that a little bit more. And your aim is to slide underneath it without hitting the ball. And you'll get that really gentle type of flop shot. Okay, so I think that'll do for today. We can definitely do more on the course with this. Do you need a lob wedge? Not sure. If you haven't got one, there's lots of demo lob wedges, funnily enough, in the shop. You don't get many demo clubs sometimes, but for some reason, there's loads of lob wedges. TaylorMade and Cleveland have quite a nice range of demo kits, so you can put a graphite shaft or a steel shaft in your lob wedge and give it a go. So yeah, if you haven't got one, try one. If you have got one, come out here and learn to use it properly, and don't think it's going to get you out of trouble, because it could put you into more. Cheers for watching, everyone. See you all next week. So you can see it from this swing here, the position here, back in position.